Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. In this video, we are going to look into Spring Boot interview questions for 7+ years experience. So let's get started. Also, please do like, share and subscribe to support us so that this video reaches to more of the people preparing for interviews like you. So let's start. What is an embedded container in Spring Boot and why is it important? Now here with 7+ years experience, you are not expected to answer that yes, Spring Boot comes with Tomcat which is embedded. What they're expecting is why is Tomcat really embedded into Spring Boot and how does it help you? So Spring Boot comes with an embedded container that is Tomcat, which is a lightweight server. Why is it lightweight? Because it is made to be integrated into the framework. That is why they cannot keep it more heavyweight server. They keep it with the default configuration, which is most of the time not configurable, and it is embedded as a lightweight server so that you can run a standalone application inside a Spring Boot application as a framework. It eliminates the need for you to develop and deploy your application on external containers like WebSphere, Tomcat, Jetty, and what you can do is directly code, develop and run and test your application then and there. So it makes your life easier. Also, one good thing that embedded container do is it supports hot reloading. Now, what is hot reloading? When you make a change and then just to reflect that change, you have to restart the whole application. When you don't want to do that, you need a hot reloading. That is, you just replace that bytecode with a new bytecode and you do not redeploy. You just update your code automatically without you have to need to restart your application. You just make a change, save it. Internally, the embedded Tomcat container will do the hot reloading. That is, it will update your code and will make sure that the updated changes are reflected now, so that you don't have to stop your application and restart it.
Hey guys, recently we have launched a course covering an end-to-end full-stack application using Angular as front-end and microservices and Spring Boot as the back-end. Also, we have used Cloud to deploy this application, and we have used CI/CD, that is Jenkins and Argo CD, for continuous integration and continuous deployment. The technologies that we have used is REST, RESTful web services, Spring Boot and microservices for backend, Angular for frontend. GitHub we have used for version control system. Also, to make the code unit testable, we have used JUnits. We have used Sonar for code quality checks. Also, for containerization, we have used Docker and Kubernetes. And to deploy this whole application, we have used AWS and multiple services from AWS. Also, we have used SQL as well as NoSQL, that is MongoDB and SQL. On AWS, since for the SQL we have RDS, we have used those services, and Jenkins and Argo CD for CI/CD pipeline. Also, this is an architecture of the application that we have created where the front end is Angular and the back end is microservices. We have used ALB load balancers, Ingress for routing and load balancing. And we have used SQL and MongoDB for SQL and NoSQL DB management with Eureka server and all those microservices counterparts. Now, this is the CI/CD pipeline. This is the CI/CD flowchart for the application that we have created on local. So this is something, a flow when you create an application in local, push it to GitHub, create a Jenkins pipeline and do the CI/CD using Jenkins and Argo CD. And at the end, deploy the whole code at AWS EKS. Complete description of this course is covered in a very separate video. The link for that video is also given in the description bar below. And also the link to purchase that course from Udemy is also in the description bar below. So please go and check the description for all these links.
So now, since you have used the word hot reloading, what is hot reloading and how does it work internally in Spring Boot? So hot reloading allows the developers to make changes to their code, resources or configuration files, depends upon you. What you can do is you can change in both, in your code, in your properties file, while your application is up and running, and see those changes immediately without the need to restart the application. So this is the main point. You don't have to restart the application and wait for it to stop, then start again. You don't have to do that. It will automatically be done because of hot reloading that is done by embedded Tomcat for you. So traditionally, what we used to do when DevTools were not there, when the developers make a change, they would need to recompile, redeploy and restart the whole application to see those changes in effect. This process can be time consuming and disrupts the development flow. So you have one eye always on to start your servers whenever you make a even small change. Rather, to make it more easier, what they do is you just keep on doing the changes and your changes will be automatically reflected. That's hot reloading. So hot reloading solves this problem by dynamically updating the running application with the latest changes. So as soon as you make a change, you don't require a full restart. You just need to wait for a second. It will automatically restart for you and your changes will be updated automatically in the system. This enables you to iterate more quickly and test your changes in real time without restarting and maintaining a good development experience. Now, hot reloading can be applied to various resources. So, what all you can change and what all changes can be reflected immediately or updated automatically by Tomcat for you. So, you can always change the Java class. You can change your static resources like HTML, CSS. Third is configuration files. You can update the configuration files like properties for your YAML file and you don't have to restart. It will automatically be adjusted in the real time. I'm going to show all these things to you whenever I'm going to cover how to implement those things in Spring Boot. Fourthly, dependencies. In some cases, the hot reloading can also be extended to the dependent libraries. So you might have seen a situation in the real-time environment that you have a project A and it has a dependency of your project B. Now, if you change anything in project B, it will automatically be redirected and reloaded into the project A also. That can be also done because of hot reloading, because of Tomcat, embedded Tomcat with you, which is doing the hot reloading. So now how it works internally. So how does these hot reloading works? So does Spring Boot automatically comes with hot reloading? Answer is no. Spring Boot does not support hot reloading for sure. But it is facilitated through some development tools like DevTools. So these supports dynamic reloading of resources, code, classes and configurations. However, Spring Boot does not provide any native support for hot reloading. It integrates seamlessly with third-party tools like DevTools to enable you to have the hot reloading. So how this hot reloading works with DevTools? So it has some steps. So the steps includes monitoring the changes. It basically whenever you implement the DevTools in your application, the first thing it does is to create a hook and monitor your changes. So hot reloading continuously monitor your project source code, your Java classes, your resources, your configuration file, basically everything that is in your class path. Everything is constantly monitored and watched upon using some watchers, some event listeners to track any change that you do in real time. And as soon as you detect a change and as soon as you change anything and it detects that yes, anything is changed, then the hot reloading, what it does is it detects it. It finds, okay, did you add anything? Did you modify? Did you delete? What did you do? It determines the scope. And then as soon as it determines, okay, this is doable, it apply those changes dynamically. It's basically update that file. So if you change in Java class, it will update that file automatically. And also will tell you that I have updated it. Your system is getting restarted. Now your changes will be reflected. You don't have to restart. You can see few of these things in the logs that I'm going to show you in real time in few seconds. So based on your changes that you have done, those changes are applied automatically to the affected components within the running application without interrupting the execution. So it will actually reload the modify class, recompile and reinitiates and updates your configurations. Also, one important thing after applying the changes it does is it preserves the state. Basically, you must have some session going on, right? What the hot reloading do for you is DevTools make sure your connection is still alive. You are still maintaining the same session that is used before doing any change. So to ensure the seamless user experience, hot reloading tries to preserve the application state. Basically, it tries to keep your session data intact, to keep your session up and running, to keep your connections alive to databases so that nothing goes wrong after you made a small change which is doable and applicable on the real time. After that, it refreshes the application context because you might have done some changes in bean, in component, in dependency injection, in service, and repository. So it has to refresh the application context. So it again reinstantiate or initialize the components and makes sure that the changes are accommodated seamlessly in the real-time environment, in real-time working application. This is very important, feedback and verification. How do you know that your dev tools are implemented? In few minutes, I'll tell you how to implement the dev tools, which is a very different case in STS, Eclipse and IntelliJ. So remember, whenever you implement these dev tools, you might not be very sure that it is working. I'll show you the logs. Only after those logs are there, you can be sure that yes, it is working for you. So after applying your changes, that is after you have done your changes, it is getting reflected. What the hot reloading do is it provides you feedback in the terms of logs that yes, you have done some change and it is automatically updated. Now you can see your changes. And at the last, what it does is, in some cases, it may even do the redeployment to optimize the reloading process. Instead of recompiling, redeploying the entire application, which is also called as hot redeployment, it does the hot reloading. Also, this is a very important question. What is the difference between hot reloading and hot redeployment? If you want to know more about it, you have to let me know in the comment section. I'll create one more video and one more questions on that much high interview questions. I'm not going to keep it in this scope. This is just a intermediate level of questions. So only the modified code are compiled and deployed, and not the whole redeployment is done, which is in the case of hot redeployment. Here only the hot reloading is done, where only a part is updated rather than the complete redeployment. So these are the steps which are done basically by the hot reloading to make sure that your code is updated in the real-time environment and you do not have to restart your application. Now a very important thing. Did you implement it in your project? And if you have done that, what changes have you done? And in which IDE have you implemented it? So if you have not done it on your own, you might get stuck in this question. Because what you would have said is, it's very simple. Just type the Spring Boot DevTools and you are good to go. You're good to go in the case of Eclipse and STS after some plugin installation. But with IntelliJ, it's really difficult. I'll tell you why. So in this application, I have implemented the DevTools. So as said, what you have to do, just add the Spring Boot DevTools and you will be good to go. And you can see in the console that things are working fine. Answer is no. In IntelliJ, it doesn't happen. There are few more steps which are not usually told anywhere. And though only after those changes, you will have your DevTools up and running. So what are those steps? The first thing you have to do is to make the project build automatically. So in the setting, in the build execution deployment, in the compiler, you have to tick on build project automatically. I'm going to show you how I have done it. So here in the search, you need to search for compiler. In the settings compiler, you can see there is something called as build project automatically. You have to check this. By default, it is unchecked. When this is done, click on OK. But there is one more still step remaining. If you have an old IntelliJ, you might have to search for registry here. In this registry, you can see compiler auto make allow. So here you have compiler auto make, and I don't have that allow field here. There is a checkbox that you might have to tick. I don't have it because I have a new IntelliJ implemented. If you have an old IntelliJ in your system, then you might have to do this. And if you have new, now I'll tell you what you have to do. Go to the advanced setting and check allow auto make to start. So search again, allow auto make to start. So just click on this. By default, it is disabled. You have to just click on this and click OK. And you will have your DevTools up and running in your system. So add this dependency in your pom.xml and do those two things that I have told you, and you will be good to go. And how do you make sure that yes, it is up and running? By running the application, you can see in the logs. So I'll run this application. If you can see, live reload server is running on port number this. Also, if you want to know more about live reloading, hot reloading, hot redeployment, all these things, you have to let me know in the comment section. I'll create another interview question on that front. It is really high level, though it comes to the technical architect level interview questions. If you want to know about it, just let me know in the comment section. Now I'll prove you that yes, I have the DevTools up and running. What I can do is I can put a simple sysout statement and say hello, and so currently it's started. I'm going to empty my console and I'm going to save this. And let's wait for the system to restart automatically. And since it is going to restart, it is going to print hello. And we have one addition because we have added system.out.println here. And it prints hello. Because since it has restarted, this public static void main is again reloaded into the system, and it says, oh, whenever I have public static void main, I have to run this application, and as soon as it runs it, I have to print hello. And hence, since initially hello was not printed, now hello is printed on the console. So I have made sure that yes, my dev tools are up and running, and also my live reload server is also up and running on the system. So this is how you implement dev tools, and it depends upon IDE how you implement it. Also, some additional configuration changes you can easily do in your properties or YAML file. That is, you want to restart the application, which is by default as true because obviously it is restarted. You can see here it is restarting. So you can make it true or false if you can add this particular property in your properties file. Also, if you want to exclude some files where you don't want to continuously check for changes, then you can exclude those classes or class path resources and properties. You can exclude them. Also, the live reload server is there for browser refresh. It is by default set to true, and I have shown you that live reload server is here true. It is going to refresh your browser if anything is there on the browser. So if you want to disable this also you can do with this property. Spring DevTools live reload server enabled. Also, you can keep some secrets. So secret keys are used for remote debugging and live reload. Ensure that this key is kept secure and unique. You can use that secret key during debugging. Also, if you want to have some files which are not on your class path, but you want to make sure there is a hook created or an event listener created to look on the changes done to that file also, that also those additional path can be added with this property file. Spring DevTools restart additional path. How we can do that? Just go here in your properties file, add this property, and here you can give the path like C:, and anything there will be also have a hook to be checked if there is changes, and if it is changed, then the whole server will be restarted. So this is so good till this now, right? Because what good thing this embedded Tomcat has given you is hot reloading to make your life easier so that you don't have to restart it again and again. But there may be some cases where embedded Tomcat is really not that useful. So what are those cases? So embedded Tomcat, which is a default embedded Tomcat container that is used by Spring Boot, it might not be that suitable in certain situations. And what are those situations? Those situations can be a heavy traffic application. So for example, dynamic application, which is having loads of HTTP calls coming on your application. Like for example, there is a sale going on Flipkart. Then it's a very high traffic application. In that scenarios, a simple embedded Tomcat will not be a helpful situation. Also, if you have a complex deployment environment, for example, deployment, you need some configuration changes that has to be done to make your application up and running. You cannot change anything in an embedded lightweight server. In such cases also, lightweight embedded without any customization won't be a happy scenario for you. Then third is heavyweight applications. So suppose if your Spring Boot application is really large, it has very heavy resources, embedded Tomcat is not a good solution to you. In that case, it is good for you that you separate your code and you separate your server. In that case, you can have a segregate responsibility and you can manage them individually. Also, if you have requirement of specialized protocols that are not available and supported by Tomcat, for example, HTTP/2 is not supported. You do not have advanced WebSocket capabilities in your lightweight Tomcat, which is embedded. In that scenario also, you have to go for external Tomcat or external server. Then if you have a very legacy system, in that scenario also, you might have to, just to integrate with that system which does not have embedded Tomcat, you might have to integrate it explicitly. And very important, customization requirement. Since I told you it's a very lightweight container which is embedded in your framework, it will not allow you to customize heavily. So if your application needs a very heavy extensive customization or fine tuning of your servlet container configuration, it's better to keep your container aloof from your code base to manage it better. So these are the scenarios where embedded Tomcat might not be helpful. So that was all about the Tomcat hot reloading. Now, how can you externalize the configuration in Spring Boot? So what does this mean, externalizing the configuration properties? It might confuse you. What does that really mean? It is a simple thing. Segregating your code base and your properties. For example, here I have my controller class. In this controller, I have a property, test property, which is getting its value from this test property. What I have done is I have segregated my code and my property. My properties are now in some property file and my code base is in your SRC folder. So that is externalizing your properties. Rather than putting this test property directly here as a string, I am taking this property from the property file. That is externalizing your properties. Simple. In Spring Boot, you can externalize the configuration properties by using property file or YAML file. These files are located in the SRC main resource folder of the Spring Boot application. And by using these files, you can put some various properties such as database settings. Now what happens is, you have a database URL, username and password. If I hard code it in the code base with a string value, you might have to go there and change a username password. If anything goes wrong, you have to redeploy the whole application because the code is getting changed. But what if it is segregated in a complete resource folder in a property file, or you are using config server and there you are using a property file? Then you do not have to redeploy the complete code base changes. So in such cases, some application specific properties you can externalize or take out from your code base and put it in some separate file in the main resource folder named as application.properties file or YAML file, and then you can use that with @value annotation. So I have already done that with @value annotation. Here in the dollar and curly brace, you can give your property name, which is mapped to this property name, and automatically the value will be embedded wherever you use this instance variable. Also, there are many other ways to externalize your properties. You can set your configuration properties as environment variables. So here, I'll give you a solution where you can put your environment variables also and your VM arguments also. So while running, you have some configurations. Here, you can give your environment variables. So rather than putting this particular property in properties file, you can use this property name and value and add it here in the environment variables, and it will automatically be used. Also, you have some VM arguments options here. So you add VM options. So here you have a VM argument given options, and you can add it to VM arguments also. So it is a task of Spring Boot to automatically map your environment variables that you have given there to your code base. Also, you have a VM option in IDE. Like if you want to give the server port, for example, here I want to give my server port in the VM options. I can do that with -d server port 8099. So let's try doing it. And then it will be automatically be picked up. So here you can see my server is running on 8089. Now I want to run it on 8099. So where is 8089? I think this is where I have my 8089 configured. That is a server port. Now I want it to run on 8099. I can either change it here or also I can change here in the configuration. So here in the VM arguments, I can do -d server.port -d server.port 8099. And I'm going to go and click OK. And then let's try to restart. Initially, it was running on 8089. Now it should run on 8099. Can you see there is a change? Tomcat has started, but it is not on 8089. It's rather than 8099. Also, there is one more way. If you want to have a properties file given at some codedecode workspace location, then also you can add your properties there, and you can give the path through that properties as the Spring config location, and you can add this property in either in your properties file or in the VM arguments or in the environment variables. All the three ways I've shown you how you can do that. Then also that path will be taken as the property file source, and you can externalize your properties there. And what advantages you will get? So can you explain the concept of externalization configuration and its benefit? So we have seen how we can do the external configurations. How? Using the properties file, using the VM arguments, using the environment variables. But how is it really useful? So as I've told you, you are segregating your code base with your dynamic properties, which you can change anytime in the near future. So it gives you flexibility and customization. Basically, you can customize it based on your environment also. So this is environment specific configuration also you can do and customize it based on your requirement. So for example, my development has the database URL for Oracle. My production has a database environment URL for SQL. In those cases where I have different database URLs for different environment, I can do that with these external configurations. Also, there is a separation of concerns. Basically, your code base is very segregated and your properties are dynamically segregated. So if you're dynamically changing properties keeps on changing, your code base won't be affected. It will, on runtime, will take the changes from your properties and will update it automatically. Also for the security reason, because your code base is available to people, they might see the sensitive information also. To prevent your passwords and API keys to be leaked up to the normal user, you can keep that in some externalized configuration file with some restricted access. Like for example, I've told you, you can keep it anywhere at some restricted location and give the path of that file to your code. And then that code will automatically internally look into that property file and get it there. The normal user will only see the path to that file, will not see what is there inside the file, and hence your keys, API keys and secrets will be saved. In the real time, yes, always you can use the key vault, which is provided by cloud providers to you. But this is one of the way you can make the security intact in your application. Also, you have easy deployment and configuration management, because whenever there is some change in the dependency or the property, you can directly change it. You do not have to deploy the whole set of code base again. You can roll out your changes and do the troubleshooting without impacting the code base. You just have to redeploy your properties. That's it. Now, a very important question. You know that we can externalize in a very easy way using the properties file. And there are two types of properties file, that is application.properties and application.yaml file. So what are the advantages of YAML and why nowadays YAML is such a boom rather than the properties file? And how are the different ways to load your YAML file? So here you can see in my system, in the resource folder, I have both. So why YAML and why not properties file is the question now. So as you can see, YAML is hierarchical. Basically, it is nested in situations and it makes easier for you to understand what all properties are mapped to what. So basically, you have Spring Data Source common and your URL username. So I'm going to uncomment this for you. So here you can see this is a hierarchical way. This is Spring Data Source, and then under Data Source you have URL, username, password. It's a hierarchical. The username also shares the same parent what the URL shares. Also, it is far more readable that you know that your data source has URL, username, passwords and all these things which are very specific to data source. And when you have a JPA, these properties are very specific to JPA. That for the JPA part, I'm using the Hibernate dialect and that is auto update. Also, if you can see, I have my application restarted. Why? The reason being, I have changed a property file. Hot reloading is going to continuously monitor your class path. And since this resource folder is in your class path src folder, it is having an eye on your properties file also. And what I've done, I've uncommented this part. And since I've uncommented this, it sees that, oh, there is one modification there. I have uncommented something. I have modified something. So it has restarted my server. And now these properties are up and live with my live server now. So we were on the reason why we are using the YAML file. First is it is hierarchical. Second, it is far more readable because this is data source specific properties and this is JPA specific properties. Also, it has support for data types also. For example, here you have given integer as a number. Here you have given a string. Very high support for data types. Also, there is a way for commenting it up. So for example, initially how it was, I have commented it. I don't want to use any data source as of now. So what this will do, I'm going to remove the console. I'm going to delete the console and it is going to restart it. Why? Because I have made changes to my properties file. So also you have a support for comments here. Since I have again commented it, it is again reloading. It is restarting because I have done changes in the class path. And again, the Tomcat server is started. Now, what are different ways to load the YAML file? So you can see that this is the YAML file. I have made the changes. And the changes are actually being taken up from here only. So what changes I have done to make it work? Nothing. Only the thing you have to do is add your application.yaml file to the resource folder or in the class path, and it will be automatically be fetched. So in Spring Boot, YAML files are loaded in various ways. First, put it in the default location. Spring Boot knows that you are going to put your properties in the resource folder in src main resources. So just go keep your application.yaml file in the resource folder, and Spring Boot is smart enough to go look into that folder and see, okay, YAML and application.properties are present, I'm going to use it. So in the application.yaml file, you can put your server.port and it will automatically be fetched. You don't have to do anything. Also, what you can do is you can put some YAML file in the profile specific way. So I can have application dev.properties or application dev.yaml. I can have application prod.yaml and so on. And then it will be automatically fetched. But if I do not want to put it in my src main folder, I have it some path at the D location, which is very secure, and I don't want it to be in my project and cannot be seen to other users. It's a very secured file. What you can do is you can just give Spring config path or location in your either in the properties file or either on your environment variable or the VM argument, and it will be automatically fetching your properties from that particular file. You don't have to do anything. So first way is default one, add it in the main resource folder, but it will be visible to normal user. If it is that secured, you have passwords there, you cannot keep it there. You can keep it some separate location and give the path for that location. Also, you can put your properties which are not very changeable every time. You can put it either in the VM arguments or environment variables. Also, there is a programmatical way of loading which I do not recommend. You can use the YAML property bean factory or YAML bean mapper, but it is actually not required. You can directly add it in the resource folder and it is good. You are good to go. Now, a very important point. I have both YAML and properties. Who do you think will be taking the preference? Because I have both in the resource folder. Answer is, when both are there, always the application.yaml file takes the precedence over the properties file, and this means that YAML file will override the properties if they are same in properties file and in the YAML one. So what will be the precedence in order? So order will be, the first preference will always be given to the command line arguments, the VM arguments. So the precedence will go like, the first preference will be given to command line arguments. The command line arguments can override any property defined in anywhere. So the first preference is given to command line arguments or the VM arguments. The second is given to environment variables. These can override the properties defined in YAML and properties file. So the YAML file and properties can be directly overridden by environment variables and can be easily overridden by VM arguments or the command line tools. The third preference goes to the YAML file, and YAML file is going to take precedence over the properties file, and the last preference goes to the properties file. So if you have properties file, you have YAML file, you have environment variable, and you have VM argument. So for last preference will be given to this. If they have the same key, say server.port, all of the four are going to have the server.port. Then the port defined by the VM argument is going to take precedence. Then if this is removed, then environment variable will be given the precedence. If both of them are removed, you have just YAML and property file. Then whatever YAML property has will be given a precedence, and in the properties, the last will be the properties file. Also, in case you have profile specific YAML file like dev.yaml, then that will take precedence over the normal YAML or application.properties file. That is based on environment specific ones. How is Hibernate chosen as a default implementation for JPA without any configuration? So the question here is very tricky. When you go into your pom.xml, here you can see that whenever you have to make a connection to your Hibernate ORM framework, what you add is a starter dependency for JPA. And you expect that you are going to make a ORM implementation of Hibernate to be used in your system. And actually, magically it is done also. So what, is there any Hibernate connectivity? No, there is no Hibernate dependency added here. Then how? Just with starter JPA, Hibernate is used as a ORM implementation, because you know that JPA is just a specification. It doesn't have any implementation and extra functionality. Then how does Hibernate gets included automatically? So if you can see in the external libraries, if you scroll down, you can see Hibernate core jar automatically added apart from the data JPA that is added because of this data JPA dependency you have added in the dependencies. How is this Hibernate core jar automatically added? So answer is Spring Boot transitively understood that since you're using JPA, you must need some implementation also. So it automatically adds the Hibernate jar into your system libraries to make your life easy. So Spring Boot automatically configures Hibernate as an implementation. That is a default JPA implementation when you add the Spring Data JPA dependency in your project. This dependency automatically includes the Hibernate jar file as well as the Spring Boot auto configuration for JPA. Also, I have many more questions to cover. Like for example, how can you perform the database migration using the Flyway and Liquibase core? How would you do that? How do you create scripts? Then you have many more questions like how the hot rolling and live reloading is different, how database connections are managed, difference between construction, setter, injection, how different deployments are done with the Spring Boot application. I have many more questions to cover. If you want the second part of Spring Boot interview questions for 7+ years experience, let me know in the comment section. I'll create one more video for you. Thank you.